Good afternoon and welcome to Liquid Lunch with the Regional Water Authority here on 103.5 WNHH. You can view us anytime on the New Haven Independence YouTube page, or you can listen to us as a podcast on Apple or Spotify. I'm Kevin Watsey, the Director of Public Affairs at the Regional Water Authority, and more importantly, I am a water nerd. Today's show is just me. I'm flying solo today. Earlier this morning, my scheduled guest let me know they were unable to make it, so I decided rather than run a rerun, I would just record a show where I ask myself questions and I answer them. Um, so we're going to do that, and the topic is going to be questions that I get a lot. So I speak to a lot of groups as a representative of the water company and of my prior two water companies. I've been doing water for 20 years now, and I've spoken to a lot of community groups, and I get a lot of the same questions. So I thought I would bring you those questions today and answer those questions for you today. It also dawned on me, if you're a regular listener to this show, that I ask every guest to tell us their story, and yet I've never told the listeners my story completely. So I will tell you my story. Then we will start going into the questions that I've experienced throughout my career about the water company and about water utilities. And then we'll wrap it up as we always do with 5 unrelated questions, because I've also never answered the 5 unrelated questions. So without further ado, I will tell you my story. When I graduated from college, I went to college in South Jersey, Rowan University. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I loved Washington, D.C. So I basically moved to Washington, D.C. without a job. Um, Figured I was young and naive and I'd figure it out, and I did. So I very quickly got a job down there. This was in 2000, working on Capitol Hill in the United States Senate for the senator from New Jersey, my home state. Got a job there answering phones. It's the entry level job in the Senate. You're called a staff assistant. Phone rings 300 times a day. People call, want to express their opinion to the senator. We want the senator to vote yes on this, no on that. We love your senator. We hate your senator. You got all those phone calls. Started that job in March of 2000. 6 months later, 9/11 happened. So I was actually in the Capitol building on September 11th. Obviously, quickly got out of the Capitol building. I went back to work the next day. Our office was open the next day. Soon after that, we had the anthrax scares in Washington. Somebody mailed some anthrax to a bunch of senators, including not my senator, but the other senator from New Jersey. So that was a pretty scary time. And then a few months after that, we had the DC Sniper. For those listening, if you don't remember the DC Sniper, it was two guys going around literally shooting people as they were filling their gas tanks or walking into a store. So within my first year in Washington, D.C., that was my experience. And somehow I stuck it out another 4 years until my wife and I mutually decided we had had enough of Washington, D.C. She ended up getting a job in South Jersey, so we moved to South Jersey, and that's where I got my first water company job with a company called American Water. American Water is the country's largest investor-owned water utility, so they're publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. They're in 17 states. They serve a third of New Jersey. I was a communications assistant, so I wrote press releases. I did some government affairs. I was there for 13 years. Uh, when I left there, I was the vice president of government affairs. So I was at the highest levels, advocating on behalf of the water company and our customers there. And in that time, that's when I became the water nerd. I loved the water company. I loved the industry. I loved the people. And I met a lot of people from other water companies, and I quickly realized that there's a certain type of person that works for a water utility, and I love that person, and I want to be around these people because they're smart and they're dedicated and they only care about doing what's right for the customer. And I just loved being in that atmosphere. So I was an American for 13 years. When I left there, I ended up going to a construction company that did a lot of utility construction. So companies that install the pipe, basically, but they also worked on behalf of electric companies, gas companies. They were a utility contractor. Was not there long. I was good friends with the CEO of that company. And 9 months after he hired me, they had a huge budget shortfall, and so I was a victim of the budget shortfall. Uh, that was 3 weeks before COVID shut the world down. I got laid off. Uh, Interesting positive to that was I was able to get into the unemployment system before most people. So I didn't have a lot of the problems that a lot of people had with unemployment, but I was unemployed for 15 months because nobody was hiring during COVID. Um, but I did end up getting a job with another water company. That was Suez, who became Veolia in New York. So moved my family to the lower Hudson Valley in New York, and I worked for Veolia doing communications. So again, I was doing mostly communications, not a lot of government affairs. Um, and then 18 months after I moved to New York, I was presented with this RWA opportunity and moved to Connecticut. So my poor family lived in 3 houses in less than 2 years. Um, but I've now been at the RWA for 2.5 years. It's a great company, great people, and that's how I became the water nerd. That is my story in a nutshell. Um, so with that, as I said, I talk to a lot of groups. A lot of senior groups invite us to come talk about the water system. When I was in New Jersey, I did a lot of town hall meetings or have 100 people there to ask questions. And I would just stand in front of the room and just answer questions for hours and hours. The thing that I've learned is people really don't think about water until there's somebody standing in front of them from the water company. And then a million questions come out, and it's a lot of the same questions. So I thought, like I said, I thought I'd come answer some of those questions that I get. And I will tell you the number one question that I get. I don't know that I've ever not gotten this question. It's not really a question as much as is a statement that I turn into a question, which is water should be free, they say. It falls from the sky, water should be free. Why do I have to pay for water? And what I like to tell folks is the water is actually free. Um, you can, get a bucket and go down to the river or the lake or Long Island Sound and grab your water and take it home. You're not actually paying for the water. You're paying for the water to be pumped into the treatment plant, treated to regulatory standards, and delivered to your house in abundance. That's actually what your water bill pays for. And by the way, you're paying about a penny a gallon for that. So when you really think about it, our water consumption charge is about a penny a gallon. That covers the salaries of our employees. That covers the maintenance of the pipes in the ground. That covers the energy costs. That covers the chemical costs because you got to use chemicals to treat the water to make it safe. As I said, the maintenance cost. It's all wrapped up in that penny a gallon. So when folks say water should be free, I tend to say it's a pretty good deal that you're getting that convenience to be able to turn your tap on, have as much water as you want that meets every regulatory standard for a penny a gallon. Um, and when you explain it to people that way, I think they kind of have a different appreciation for it. At the RWA, we just started doing more public tours of our water treatment plants to try and bring home the fact that it is a very complicated process to run a water treatment plant, and our guys are the best at it. And again, it's a penny a gallon. You're getting all of this expertise for a penny a gallon. With that, I also, it's kind of tied in. We'll always get questions about why is my water bill so high, and there's a number of answers to that. I hate to say it depends, but that's one of those depends. Water bills are typically higher in the summer because consumption goes up. Folks are hot, they use more water, they fill pools, they clean off their sidewalk with the hose. So the water bill goes up. They water their grass. I don't think there's a proper appreciation out there for how much water irrigation systems use. They use a lot of water. A lot of folks don't have rain sensors on their irrigation systems. I've driven in pouring rain and seen sprinklers on because they're just on a timer and folks don't pay attention to that. So one of the reasons your water bill may be higher than you expect is it's just summer and you're using more water. Another reason that it could be high is you might have a leak. Um, water leaking into a toilet, you may not even notice it's leaking, the toilet's leaking, but boy, can that go through a lot of water. There's a very simple test you can do to see if your toilet is leaking. You can take a little food coloring, a little coffee ground, something that's going to turn the water a different color, put it in the tank of the toilet. 5 minutes later, if the water in the bowl of the toilet is that color, your toilet's leaking. You got to change the gaskets. You got to do something to fix that leak, because that is one of those leaks that will make your water bill go up. A lot of water meters, every water meter actually has its own leak detection dial on it. So if you're sure that there's no water running in your house, you go look at your water meter and you see that dial spinning, there's water going through the meter. So you have a leak. Uh, and you can call a plumber to figure out where that leak is. So that's another reason your water bill can be high. Um, it's very, very rare, but sometimes meters are wrong. If you think that's it, we're more than happy to send somebody out and check the water meter, test it, make sure that it's measuring the way it's supposed to measure. So those are a few of the reasons why folks would get a higher water bill. Um, it's like I said, usage and unfound leaks are the two biggest reasons that you would get a higher water bill. Another big question I get, I'll move on to the next question, is folks ask me all the time. This may be 1A as far as the question that I get asked most is about water filters. What about Brita? The little pitcher that you have in your fridge with that little filter on it. Do I need one of those? And the way I answer that is no, you don't. The water that we send out of our treatment facilities into the pipes into your home meets all regulatory standards. It's good, top quality water that doesn't need any extra filtration. The caveat to that is if you live in a very old home that has some really old plumbing, we don't know what happens to that water after it passes through our meter or passes into the home plumbing. So if you're not confident in your own home's plumbing, then Brita is okay. It's not that we as the water company hate these Brita systems, these Brita pitchers and stuff. We just, for the vast majority of people, we just don't think it's necessary because the water we're sending to you is good quality water. What I'll also tell folks, most important thing about these Brita systems and other water filtration systems is you gotta change the filters, because all of that stuff that the filter is going to take out of your water, if the filter's old, it'll actually start putting it back into the water because filters get saturated. So there's a point where the filter can't take anything else out. It's saturated. Now it's putting that stuff back in. So if you're going to use one of those filters, make sure you change it. And on that, the water company, at the water company, we hear all the time about these water filtration scams where people are going door to door. They're taking advantage of the fact that folks don't really know what's going on with their water. They'll put a few drops of something in a test tube of water. It'll turn a color, and that'll scare people. And then they'll try and convince them to spend $5,000 on a whole house filtration system. Those are completely unnecessary. We've done a lot of advertising around that, making sure people know that they don't need a whole house filtration system by and large, and that those tests are just scams. Many of you may have gone to Home Depot. You have somebody standing at the door handing out water test kits. Send us a sample. We'll tell you how your water is. Those are literally just filtration companies trying to sell you $5,000 filtration systems. If you do have concerns, legitimate concerns about your water, you can call us. Our water quality folks will talk to you. We can test your water. If you don't want us to test your water, you can go on the state DPH's website. They have a list of certified labs. If you're going to have your water tested, make sure it's through a lab that has no skin in the game, meaning they're not a lab who also sells filters. Make sure they're just a certified water lab. The RWA has one of the best certified water testing labs in the state, if not the New England area. A lot of other water companies actually send their water to us for testing because we're certified in so many tests that other labs are not certified to do. So, um, that's kind of the gist on filters and water testing. Um, which will kind of roll me into another question that I get a lot is just general questions about water quality. Is the water safe to drink? I always filter my tap water, and the answer is yes. The water meets all regulatory standards. The regulatory standards are very tough, by the way, that we have to meet those standards. So the water, yes, the water, you can drink your tap water without any more filtration. I've been drinking tap water for 20 years, made my daughter's bottles with the tap water out of my house, and we've never had a problem. It's good quality. It's made by dedicated people. The water company, we do 60 to 70,000 water sample tests a year to make sure that that water that we're sending to your house or your business meets those standards. Um, we put out a report every late spring, early summer, the Consumer Confidence Report, also known as the Water Quality Report. I actually did a whole show a couple of months ago on our water quality report, but you can get that on our website. We mail it to your house every year. It details the results of those water quality tests that we do throughout the year, and uh, it tells you if we've missed any of those standards, if we had higher results than we're allowed to have. It details that. And with that, if we do have a test that is much higher than we're allowed to have, we're not going to wait for that water quality report to tell you about it. If it's something that we're required to tell the customers about, you will hear from us. We have a number of ways to let our customers know what's going on, including a reverse 911 code red system where we can call you. We have social media. We have relationships with the local TV channels. They'll do stories if we ask them to. So in the event where there is something wrong with the water, you'll hear about it. You won't have to wait for a report next year. You'll know about it. We're required to tell you about it, but even if we weren't, we would still tell you about it. Another water quality related question I get all the time is about chlorine. Folks will tell me their water smells like pool, smells like bleach. That's the chlorine in the water, right? So, we have to have chlorine in the water. That is one of the regulations where we have to be able to detect chlorine in the water at every part of the system. Even the last house on our distribution system has to have chlorine in that water. So we have to put so much chlorine in the water so that it makes it that far into the system. So at certain points, depending on where you live, your water may have more of a chlorine taste. I always tell people, it's safe. If you're smelling chlorine, it's not a big deal. If it was so much chlorine that it was harmful, your eyes would be bloodshot and you'd have a hard time breathing. This is one of those instances, though, where if the chlorine taste or smell is too much for your individual liking, that's something that Brita can take care of. You could also put your water in a pitcher, give it a good shake, and let the top off, and that chlorine will dissipate out of it. Interesting note about chlorine. The United States has really only been adding chlorine to the public drinking water systems for about 100 years. 19 teens, 1920s is when chlorine became a standard. The result of that, though, very interestingly, is the life expectancy in the United States rose by almost 20 years. Because, and that wasn't the only factor, but one of the main factors was because we started chlorinating the water. Waterborne illnesses dropped by 90% in the decade after we started adding chlorine to the water system. So it really was a scientific revolution that improved public health more than you can imagine. I mean, it's really incredible that just a simple step of adding chlorine to the water could really change society the way that it did back in the 1920s. And Jersey City, New Jersey was the first major city in the country to chlorinate the water. And we're thankful for that. So if you do smell chlorine, I always say that's a good thing. It means your water is safe to drink. Another question that comes up a lot, especially in the past year, is about lead and lead pipes. If you listen to the show regularly, we've done 2 shows on lead, so I encourage you to go back and listen to them. But I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version of the lead pipe discussion. Pre 1950, plumbers used lead for water services to get the water from the water company mains in the street into the house. Um, you know, Science has proven that lead pipes are not good. Lead in water is not good. Um, so the government has passed a bunch of regulations to get the lead out, as they call it, get all the lead out of the ground, out of water systems. The RWA, for the past 40 years, has been getting the lead out of our system, and by and large, there's really not any lead left on our side of the system, but there is lead and galvanized pipe, which is pipe containing some lead solder, that exists on the customer side, and it is the water company's responsibility to identify where those lead pipes are and get those lead pipes out of the system. A couple things I want to point out. For 40 years, the RWA has been adding something to the water. It's called a corrosion control inhibitor to the water, and what that does is it coats your pipes so that even if you do have a lead pipe, it creates a barrier between that lead pipe and the water so that the lead from the pipe does not leach into the water. We do lead testing all year at houses that are most likely to have lead and businesses that might have had lead to make sure that there's no lead in the system. We have never been out of compliance with lead testing, which tells us that our corrosion control practices actually work. Having said that, we still have a new regulation to meet. The United States EPA has given water companies till 2037 to get all the lead out of the system. You may have gotten, if you're a customer of ours, you may have gotten letters from us last year telling you that we've identified that you have a lead service or a galvanized service in need of replacement. Those letters actually will be going out again next month. We are required to send that letter every year. So we will be sending that letter every year. We are also putting the finishing touches on what we would call our lead service replacement program. So this is the program where we're actually going to go send contractors to homes and replace those lead services where we've identified them. If you got a letter saying that you have a lead or galvanized service, you will be hearing from us. I won't say it's tomorrow or even this year, but you will be hearing from us to schedule that replacement in the future. Until we get to that point, just rest assured we're using our corrosion control. It's working. The tests are proven it's working. A question I'm sure that I will get when we start talking more about this replacement program is, if I replace it myself, will the water company reimburse me? And the answer to that is no. The customer owns and is responsible for that water service line from the curb into their house. You can replace that anytime you want at your expense. If you want it replaced as a part of our program, you will have to be patient until we contact you. So that's it on the lead. If you have any more questions about lead, I do encourage you to go back and listen to the 2 shows that we recorded with Tom Barger, who's the water company's water quality manager. We did 2 hours worth of radio talking about lead. So I go back and listen to that. Let's see some of the other questions that I get. It's a simple question with not a simple answer. I get a lot of times folks will raise their hand and say, where does my water come from? And you think that would be an easy one to answer, but the RWA system is very interconnected, and it's very dependent on the time of year, the demands on the water system as to where your specific water comes from based on where you live. So if you live in New Haven, your water may be coming from the Whitney plant in Hamden. It may be coming from North Branford and Branford. It really depends on how we're opening and closing valves, how the booster stations are going, how much demand is in the system. So when folks raise their hand and ask me that question, I wish I could just say your water comes from the Whitney plant in Hamden, but it's never that easy for most people. there are some spots where we can tell you, yes, your water comes from here because we just know how the system works. But as a communications guy, I even get frustrated when I'm in the building on Sergeant Drive and I say, hey, I'm going to talk to a group in Cheshire today. Where's their water come from? And the answer is, well, it depends. You know, if it's May, it may be coming from here. If it's July, it may be coming from here. If it's August, or if it's December, it may be coming from there. And that doesn't help me when I get the question. But the fact is, that's the answer. It really depends on so many factors where your water comes from if you are a customer of the RWA. But rest assured, wherever it comes from, we are treating it. It meets all the standards, and at the end of the day, it actually doesn't matter where it's coming from because it's all top quality drinking water. Uh, Another question that I kind of like when I get is there's blue paint all over my street. What are you guys doing? Um, you may see commercials called call before you dig. Those are markouts. So if anytime somebody's digging in the area, they have to put in a ticket to call before you dig, and then all of the utilities, not just water, have to go and spray paint the sidewalks and the streets to indicate to whoever's digging where the buried infrastructure is. So the blue paint is water infrastructure. So you'll see a line where the service is or where the main is. I believe yellow is electric. So if you see yellow, it means there's some electric there. Green, I think, is sewer. Red, I think, is telecom. But if you see your street painted like that with lines and stuff, it's because somebody called for a mark out. If you see the blue paint, it doesn't mean that it's the water company that called for the mark out or the water company that's doing work. Somebody could be having a fence installed. Somebody can be, adding on to their house. There's a million reasons why you should, and people do call for markouts. We just happen to be the one spraying it blue. Doesn't necessarily mean we're doing the work. And you can actually call before you dig, give them your address, and they will tell you who called for the markout in that area if you really want to know what's going on in the area. Question I've started to get recently: why does the water company own so much property? So if you're not aware, the water company owns about 28,000 acres of property in the New Haven region, and I just recently learned 40% of the open space in New Haven, greater New Haven region is owned by the Regional Water Authority. Why do we own that property? It's to protect the water, to protect the water sources. We own reservoirs all around the area, and we try and own all the property around those reservoirs to protect it from development and protect the quality of that water that's flowing into those reservoirs. So we have systematically bought property over the last 25, 30, 40 years to protect that land. And so we're up to 28,000 acres. We did a couple land purchases even last year to help bolster that. If the property is in our watershed, we want to prevent it from being developed, and therefore we will buy that land. We will protect it. It will never be developed. One of the benefits of us owning that land is we open a lot of it to our customers in the form of our recreation program. We did a show on that one last year on the recreation program, but you can buy a pass and go hike the trails. We have miles and miles of trails. We, depending on where you are, we allow fishing and salt install. We allow cross-country skiing. So, during certain times of the year, we do a deer hunt on our property. All that information's on our website, but really our customers are the beneficiary of us owning this land, because for a majority of it, we do open it up to our customers with recreation passes to go enjoy it. And it's gorgeous land. It's absolutely beautiful land. That rolls into, I don't get this question much, but I want to talk about it anyway. The RWA has a police force that is charged with protecting this land and making sure that people don't trespass on the land, making sure people don't do what they're not supposed to do on this land. We get a lot of ATVs and four-wheelers that are illegally on this land. They cause erosion, which is very bad, obviously, for the water quality. So they are getting those ATVs off the land. we own a lot of waterways where fishing is prohibited because of the classification of that waterway. They will ticket you if you are caught fishing in a lake that you're not allowed to fish in. They will ticket you if you're caught trespassing without a recreation pass. They are, my police captain loves when I say this. They're real cops. They can ticket you. They can kick you off the land. It is not public land. It is owned by the water company. But if you have a recreation pass and you're not doing something you're not supposed to do, you can enjoy that property. Um, Question I get all the time. I'm going to read it right off my page. Is the pizza better in New Haven because of the water? Yes. There's something about the water, and I just can't tell you what it is, but yes. Um, Throw in a quick fact here. This isn't a question, but it's something I love to tell our customers. The water company produces a lot of water, on average 45 million gallons a day. We pump, treat, and deliver to our customers. Only about 3% of that water is actually consumed, meaning it's drunk, drinking drunk, by the consumer, used for cooking. The other 95% of it goes straight down the drain. You're talking washing machines, dishwashers, showers, filling pools, baths, um, all of those non-consumable reasons that you would use water. But every drop of water that we send to your house has to be treated as if it's going to be consumed. So, and again, it's all for a penny a gallon. So even though we know 97% of it is never going to touch your lips, we have to act like all 100% of that water is going to touch your lips. A couple more questions here. Conservation. A lot of folks ask about conservation. The water company is all in favor of conserving water. It is a precious, finite resource. But I will tell you that the biggest, we actually see year over year, consumption goes down about 1%. And that's not necessarily because people are actively trying to consume water. That is because appliances are just much more efficient now. There's regulations on toilets, how much water a toilet can use, how much water a shower head can use, how much water the dishwasher and the washing machine can use. And all of those advances in technology on the appliance side have led to a drop off in water consumption, not just at the RWA, but nationwide. Every water company across the country has seen a drop off in water consumption because of these high efficiency appliances. And it's a good thing, right? If we can get away with using a toilet that only uses 1.5 gallons versus 4 gallons, that's great. Because as I said, water is a finite resource. We up here in Connecticut, in the Northeast, in New England, especially the RWA, we're fortunate. We do have a lot of water supply here, but you look at other parts of the country, California, Arizona, Nevada, they don't have access to the water that we have here. They struggle, especially during a drought. They struggle. They cut water usage. My old company, American Water, operated in California, and the water company would actually give customers grants to get rid of their lawn to promote conservation. They would give out $2,000 grants to get rid of their lawn and put stone or something else in, as a way to promote water conservation. So we believe in water conservation. Technology is taking care of a lot of it, but there are things that customers can do. I mentioned smart irrigation and rain sensors. Those are ways that you can save a lot of water. Let technology be your friend on this. You don't even have to think about it. Last question, and then I'm going to do 5 unrelated questions. A lot of people seem to be really interested in how deep our pipes are buried. Pipes generally are buried at least 4 feet deep, 48 inches, and there is a method to that madness. There's something called the frost line. So when it's freezing cold outside, the ground will freeze up to 3 to 4 feet deep, and then it hits a temperature where the air temperature does not affect the ground temperature, and that's at about 4 feet. So we put our pipes at least 4 feet deep. That way, they're not going to freeze. We have some pipes 7, 8 feet deep, and that's just because roads have been rebuilt, resurfaced, and over time, it's gone from 4 to 7 or 8 feet deep. Even though we're not a sewer company, American Water did do sewer. I can tell you there are sewer pipes that are 20, 30, 40, 50 feet deep because sewer relies on gravity. Um, so sometimes you have to bury those pipes 30 or 40 feet deep to take full advantage of the gravity that exists. Um, so that's it. I mean, I love talking to groups. So if you're out there listening and you would like me or somebody else from the water company to come talk to your group and ask some of these questions, um, reach out to us. My information's on the website. You can send an email, reach out to us. We are more than happy to come talk to community groups about this stuff. Um, I love, if you couldn't tell, I'm the water nerd. I love doing this stuff. I love when I go into a room and people's first reaction is, why is he here? Why do I care about this? And then, 5 or 6 minutes in, I start to see smiles, and then I say, okay, any questions? And every hand shoots up. Because again, they don't think about it till they think about it. When they do think about it, they have a lot of good questions. So now that I've answered many of the most commonly asked questions I have gotten in my almost 20 years with water utilities, I am going to answer my own 5 unrelated questions because why not? So, do I have any pets? Yes, I have a cat named Furby. He is a smushy face Persian. Um, he is the greatest cat of all time. I've never in my life had a cat that you can literally do anything to, and he just, you can rub his belly, you can put your hand on his face, and he doesn't care. I call him boneless because he literally is just like skin and fur in your hands. He goes boneless. He is a great cat. Um, who is my favorite musician or band? Since this is my question, I'm actually going to name a few because I have very eclectic tastes. If you've listened to this show, you've heard me talk about the greatest job I ever had, which was working backstage at a concert venue in New Jersey. Um, I got to see 400 bands in 3 years at that place. I got to hang out with them backstage, got friendly with some of them. But personally, um, to me, it all starts with Metallica. I love Metallica. I just think they're the greatest rock band ever. Um, I love them. I've seen them twice live. I just think everything they do, with the exception of 2 albums about 20 years ago, is great. Um, I also love Huey Lewis and the News. I think they're deeply, deeply underappreciated. Um, great, great musicians. The band is great. Huey Lewis had a great voice, great music. Love Huey Lewis and the News. Um, I like classical music. I love waltzes by Strauss. I like marches by John Philip Sousa. So I really like everything, but in my mind, if I was on a desert island, you give me Huey Lewis and the News and Metallica, and I'm a very, very happy person. I also love Frank Sinatra. I would add Sinatra to that list too. Um, what is my favorite hobby? So I love riding my bike. On a Saturday morning, I'll be up on the bike path between 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. In the spring, summer, and fall, I'll do before between 40 and 70 miles, depending on how I feel that day. Um, I just love it. It was something I got into during COVID. My wife literally was sick of me being home and unemployed. And she said, "Why don't you go for a bike ride?" And that was it. I haven't stopped riding since she said that. And I'm not even kidding. Last year, I rode my bike 1,750 miles. Way behind this year because the weather hasn't been great. I hurt my foot, a whole bunch of reasons. But I love riding my bike. I also love golf. Don't get to play it as much, but I do love playing golf. Um, so those are just 2 of my favorite hobbies. Uh, Cookies, brownies, or ice cream. Love brownies, but if you gave me a plate of brownies or asked me if I want ice cream, I would pick ice cream every time. And I always ask my guests what flavor, and so I will tell you, to me, there's nothing better than if you have a good quality chocolate and a good quality vanilla mixed together. I just think that's the absolute best. Last unrelated question to myself: who was my favorite teacher in school and why? And that is an easy one. I actually did love all of my teachers. I was the type of kid that didn't have many friends my own age, but I was friends with a lot of my teachers. I actually played golf with my teachers on the weekends. And the guidance counselor and the French teacher would call me up on a Saturday morning and ask if I'd want to play golf with them. So it was, me at 17 and a couple of 50-year-old men playing golf. But my favorite teacher was a guy named Ken Smutko. He was my high school history teacher, and he changed my life. Um, they did a class trip to Washington, D.C., went on that trip, spent the entire day with him again because I'd rather be with the teachers than the kids, and just gave me this deep, deep, deep love for democracy and the nation's capital and the Capitol building. And it just made me want to live there and be there. And I ended up living there and working there for 5 years. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Mr. Smutko. He treated all the kids really with respect. He was fun. He was interesting. Um, just a great everything you want a teacher to be. Mr. Smutko was. Love that guy. He's still with us, and I hope he's doing well up in South River, New Jersey, down in South River, New Jersey. So those are my 5 unrelated question answers. I know people who listen to the show have probably been wondering, why doesn't Kevin answer these questions? Well, now I did. So, in closing, one thing I want you to take away from this is that I literally can talk for 40 minutes straight about water. Um, and if you do have questions, by the way, that you would like us to answer on this show, shoot me an email. It's KWATSEY at rwater.com. More than happy to answer any and all questions that come in. Again, if you want to invite us to come talk to your group, please, you know how to get a hold of me now. We'll come talk to your group. And with that, this has been another edition of Liquid Lunch with the Regional Water Authority. If you missed any part of the show today, you can go onto the YouTube channel, New Haven Independence YouTube channel, or look for us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And with that, raise your glass of drinking water and cheers to a happy, healthy week ahead. Thanks.